Hey friends, this is Just Tameika. Ahead of today's episode, I wanted to talk about this month's featured sponsor. So oh my goodness, our sponsor is Sippin' Crafts. Sippin' Crafts is an online store where you can purchase all of your customizable goods needs. So here we are in the season of dads and grads. We are so easy to be able to pop on over to her store. She's on Instagram. You can find her at Sippin Crafts 24, SIPPINCRAFTS 24 on Instagram. And you can custom order any manner of shirt, hat, hoodie, cup, or anything else you could think of. The work is quality and the shipping is timely. She has also recently started a tutorial learn with me type of video series on Instagram. If you're interested in finding and following her there, you would simply go to YouTube and you would look up Sippin' Crafts. Again, SIPPINCRAFTS. So go on over and give our sponsor a visit. Alrighty, see you in a few minutes for our episode. Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Just Tameika. I'm really glad you're here. So, can we talk about men for a minute? Now, fellas, don't worry. I promise this isn't going to be another one of those men are the problem conversations. And ladies, before you start nudging your husband, boyfriend, your son, brother, uncle, or that one stubborn man in your life who thinks I'm fine is a complete emotional vocabulary, stay with me. This conversation is for us all. June is Men's Health Month because it's also Pride Month and Juneteenth season. I've been thinking a lot about freedom, healing, and the things that people carry that nobody else can see. As a therapist, I've learned something that surprises a lot of people. The people who seem the strongest are often carrying the heaviest loads. The guy who never complains, the dad who keeps working overtime, the husband trying to keep everything together, the young man trying to figure out who he is while pretending he already has all the answers. Maybe it's the grandfather who grew up in a generation where nobody talked about feelings. Sometimes they're carrying stress, sometimes grief, sometimes depression, and sometimes loneliness. Sometimes they're carrying all these things at the same time. The tricky part, a lot of them have really become good at hiding it. I've seen men sit down across from me and tell me they're fine with a smile on their face while their shoulders are carrying enough weight for three people. And honestly, sometimes I think society has accidentally rewarded that. We praise men for sacrificing. We praise them for enduring. We praise them for handling everything. But we don't always ask what it's costing them. And that's what I want to talk about today. Not because men are the only people who struggle, not because women don't carry heavy burdens too, but because men have always been taught that the way to survive is to stay silent. We've all heard the saying, the strong silent type, right? Silence can be a very, very lonely place. One of the things I've noticed in my own life is that many of the men I know are incredibly dependable. They're people everyone calls when something breaks, when somebody needs help moving, when there's a crisis, when someone needs advice. They're often the first ones people turn to. I wonder sometimes, who do they call? Who checks on the person everyone else depends on? Who asks the strong friend if they're tired? Who asks the provider if he's overwhelmed? Who asks the father if he's scared? Because here's something I've learned both personally and professionally. Being needed by everyone doesn't always mean you're supported by someone. These are two very different things. A lot of men have become experts at providing support while struggling to receive it. Guys, that's not strength. That's isolation wearing a superhero costume. And eventually, superheroes get tired. I can't tell you the number of times that I've encountered men who are in relationships, either as husbands or partners, who want to carry everything. They're so worried about being burdensome or their women counterparts worrying about them that they think they have to shoulder all burdens and that they can't share it together. I often say, from a spiritual perspective, I like to remind my husbands out there that, listen, this is your helpmeet, and that your partner cannot help if you don't share with her, if you don't let her. And to speak for the women, a lot of times when men are trying to carry that, for the women, it feels heavy. We know something's wrong. We feel like we are supposed to help, walk at least side by side and add where we can. But if that is not given the opportunity, then how do you move forward? How do you share the load? And so I think that's what a lot of us, and sisters, a lot of you too, have that, oh, I got it, I don't need help mentality, but we all need that extra something. We have to learn how to share the load. So I'm not going to keep you too long, but as we wrap up, I want to acknowledge something unique about this month. June holds Men's Health Month. June holds Pride Month, and June holds Juneteenth. At first glance, those might seem like separate conversations, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they all touch on something deeply human: freedom, right? Freedom comes in many ways. So, this can be freedom to tell the truth. This could be your freedom to be seen, freedom to seek help, the freedom to stop carrying these things alone. Juneteenth reminds us that freedom delayed is still freedom worth pursuing. And I think the same is true for healing. Maybe you've been carrying anxiety for years, maybe grief, shame, exhaustion. Maybe you're carrying questions you're afraid to ask or wounds that nobody knows about. Healing delayed is still healing worth pursuing. And because it's Pride Month, I also want to acknowledge our members of the LGBTQ plus community. Mental health matters in every community. Every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves support. Every person deserves a place where they can tell the truth about what they're carrying. As a person of faith, one of the things I appreciate most about Scripture is that it never pretends that people are perfect. The Bible is full of exhausted people, full of grieving people, fearful people, overwhelmed people, people who needed help, people who needed rest, people who needed God and community. So if you're listening today and you're struggling, let me remind you, you don't have to earn support. You don't have to prove you're hurting badly enough. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Healing often begins with simple sentence, I'm not okay. And sometimes the next sentence is even more powerful. I don't want to do this alone. I want to thank you all for tuning in and for spending time with me. I very much feel like this is a space where I get to do this, where I get to explore these things, and want to make sure that it's an open space for all of us to be able to walk together. If anything that you've heard today resonates with you, if anything that you've heard was encouraging, share this. Share it with somebody, because we never know who needs to hear this. We never know who needs our support. We never know who this message can just kind of get through those rough edges. So I just want to make sure that I'm cultivating a space of peace, of awareness, of growth, of self-reflection, but a place where it's judgment-free, a place where it's okay to not be okay, a place where it's okay to just kind of lean in and find out, well, what does help look like for me? I often say, what does this look like in real life, or what does that look like in real life? But I want to make sure that while we talk about health in general, and specifically this month's men's mental health, we're not just focusing on statistics. We're not just focusing on diagnosis and not just therapy, but that we actually take the time to talk about the human beings behind labels. We're talking about fathers, sons, brothers. We're talking about husbands, partners, friends. We're talking about the weight that men carry. And if you're a man listening today, chances are if there's a man in your life whom you deeply love, hopefully this conversation may help you understand them a little better. And this is an opportunity to further the conversation. I'm a firm believer that a lot of times people don't seek help where there's shame and stigma because it's not normalized. If we have these conversations and build spaces to hold these thoughts, these conversations, and these spaces of awareness, then we're going to spark those conversations. If I'm talking about it, if you're talking about it, if your friends are talking about it, then it becomes normal. If you think back to a few years ago, nobody was talking about any sort of mental health. But if you pay attention to the shift that's been happening as we talk about things more in these spaces, as we create, convene, and hold these spaces sacred, people now can admit, yeah, I have anxiety. Yeah, I have ADHD. Oh, yeah, I have, maybe it's dyslexia. Whatever the thing is, people feel safe talking about it because it's something that they understand they're not the only holders of. They're not the ones walking alone in it. So let's make sure that we are looking out for each other, that we're connecting with each other, that we're sharing this message far and wide. Many men grow up hearing messages like, man up, stop crying, handle it. And as a result, many men become experts of functioning while hurting. They go to work, take care of families, show up for everyone else while carrying stress, anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, loneliness, and maybe even fear. I've reflected on conversations with people close to me, and one theme kept emerging. Many men feel responsible for everyone else's well being while feeling there's very little space for their own. You know, who's checking on these protectors? Hey, how are you doing? How are things? Are you okay? And just give them the space to talk. You don't have to have a ready made script. Just genuinely check in on somebody. People won't give you what they don't think you can handle. So if you aren't ready to be a safe space, then leave that to somebody else. You have to allow people the freedom to tell you what they're gonna tell you and not judge. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's big. You don't have to know how to fix it, you just have to be there with them. I think it's important to acknowledge some additional realities, and that is that many Black men navigate not only normal stresses of life, but also racial stress, stereotypes, systemic challenges, and expectations that can make vulnerability feel risky. Some have learned that emotional expression may be viewed as weakness, but surviving and healing are not the same thing. Talking is not gonna help me, them. Many care deeply, but may fear judgment. They may feel uncertain about therapy or just have the lack of language for what they're feeling. Sometimes therapy is simply a place you can go where you don't have to be responsible for everyone every 50 minutes, and that's powerful. Fathers need support too. Good fathers carry enormous emotional weight. They worry about finances, their children's futures, their relationships, and whether they're doing enough. Fathers need encouragement too. They need permission to be human. And then let's look at relationships and emotional intelligence. Healthy relationships are not built by pretending everything is fine. They're built through honesty, through accountability and connection. It's being able to say, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm hurt, I'm scared. Those words can transform relationships. I want to make sure that this is inclusive of all relationships. And because June is Pride Month, I want to acknowledge that even those relationships are a space where one person might be carrying the weight versus another. So I would say that these same things apply. And when it comes to stressors, they affect our body and our mental and emotional health. Mental health challenges do not discriminate. So whatever your background, your identity, or life experience, your mental health matters. You deserve support, compassion, and spaces where you can be honest about what you're carrying. Wow, I've said a lot today. I think there was just a lot on my heart. But before we close, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Juneteenth. Juneteenth commemorates the day that enslaved African Americans in Texas finally learned that they were free more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had been issued. So at its heart, Juneteenth is about freedom. And while freedom has many meanings, one thing I've been reflecting on lately is the connection between freedom and truth. The people who received that news on Juneteenth Day can now walk fully in their freedom until the truth was known. So in a very different way, I think there's a lesson there about our mental and emotional well-being. Healing often begins with truth, the truth that we're struggling, the truth that we're hurting, that we're grieving, or that we need support. And for many men, especially Black men, there can be tremendous pressure to stay silent, to push through and carry burdens alone. But silence is not freedom. Pretending is not freedom. Isolation is not freedom. And as we celebrate Juneteenth, may we continue pursuing freedom from stigma, freedom from shame, freedom from unhealthy expectations, and freedom to seek help when we need it. Juneteenth reminds us that freedom delayed is still freedom not worth is still freedom worth pursuing in the same way that healing delayed is healing worth pursuing. No matter how long you've been carrying something, it's not too late to begin the journey towards wellness. Many people who are struggling deeply don't always look like they're struggling. And if you're concerned about someone, ask. If you're struggling, reach out. Connection saves lives. So I want you to remember that being strong does not mean carrying everything alone. Healing often begins with a simple truth: I need support. I'm reminded that even the strongest biblical figures experience struggle, grief, exhaustion, and doubt. Being human has never disqualified anyone from receiving love, support, grace, or healing. So, I want to leave you with this message. Let's remember to check in on our men in our lives. If you're carrying something heavy today, please hear this. You do not have to carry it alone. I want to thank you for spending your time with me. And you know what? Until next time, be kind to yourselves and to one another. And as always, this is Just Tameika. See you next time.